They changed equations that changed the world, and then they vanished. 10 scientists, 10 unfinished discoveries, all leading towards something that official history denies exists. Their names appear in patents, in research papers, in forgotten footnotes. Then, nothing. No trace, no obituary, no record of return. Governments sealed their laboratories. Families received unsigned telegrams. Do not inquire further. In declassified cables, one repeated phrase surfaces. Reality breach confirmed. Some say these people reached a limit built into the universe, a point where observation alters existence itself. Others whisper that they were taken, not silenced. What if the laws of physics are only true until someone proves otherwise? Tonight, we open the files marked Disappeared Scientists, Confidential, Level 7. Each case begins with discovery and ends where the map of reality folds. Across the last century, scientific history has been built on two foundations: discovery and disappearance. For every breakthrough we celebrate, there are others erased, sealed, or mislabeled as failure. Between the late 1930s and today, at least 10 prominent researchers vanished under conditions that share the same pattern: contact with an idea that defied the known framework of physics. The official records say accident, suicide, or voluntary disappearance. Yet the archive timelines reveal something stranger. Each case occurred within days of acclaimed success. Experiments touching energy without source, time without sequence, or matter that obeyed thought. The data gaps are identical, the investigations classified. When declassified Cold War documents from Project Anodyne surfaced in 1991, analysts noticed a recurring notation: ES loop, scribbled beside names long removed from academic databases. No project number, no explanation, just the symbol and the word containment. The introduction to this dossier begins there, at the point where science met something that refused to stay in its equations. What if reality itself reacts to being understood? What if observation is not passive but participatory, a loop between consciousness and the physical world? These scientists seem to find evidence of that loop, and then were absorbed by it. This series does not claim certainty. It reconstructs fragments: missing lab logs, confiscated notebooks, unfiled patents, and photographs altered by magnetic degradation. Each piece reveals the same trajectory: human curiosity pushing beyond a frontier that perhaps was never meant to be crossed. Tonight, we reopen those 10 cases. The physicist who measured the frequency of matter itself. The mathematician who predicted disappearance as a function of observation. The biochemist who claimed to build synthetic consciousness. 10 names erased from public record, united by one pattern. 10 seemingly unrelated stories, yet all point to a single truth: those who touch the mechanism of reality do not come back. And so, we begin. January 7th, 1943. Nikola Tesla, 86, was found dead in room 3327 of the New Yorker hotel. The death was ruled natural, heart failure, end of story. But inside the room, investigators listed 80 trunks filled with papers, oscillators, and diagrams labeled "vibration of space." Witnesses recalled that Tesla had spent his final months obsessed with one principle: that every object, from atoms to stars, could be manipulated through its resonant frequency. To his assistants, he described it as the music of matter. Among his recovered notes were blueprints for a device marked VFR9. It resembled a Tesla coil, modified with crystal harmonics tuned to precise frequency ratios, numbers that matched Schumann resonance. the Earth's natural electromagnetic pulse. One unfinished letter to the U.S. Patent Office mentioned field cancellation by sympathetic induction, a concept that, if true, would nullify gravitational weight by phase inversion. That letter never reached Washington. Within hours of his death, the FBI's Office of Alien Property Custodian arrived. The trunks vanished into storage under top secret Smithsonian transfer. In 1950, physicist Dr. John G. Trump, uncle of future U.S. President Donald Trump, was assigned to analyze Tesla's documents. His official report claimed no practical value for national defense. Yet internal memoranda, later released under FOIA, reveal a different tone. Resonant field generation confirmed. Recommend full containment. The VFR-9 prototype was never recovered. Some believed it was destroyed. Others whispered it was quietly tested in a desert facility north of Las Vegas under a project named Echo. By 1953, a series of unexplained tremors struck that region. Seismographs recorded waveforms identical to the frequencies Tesla had written about. Classified telemetry called them harmonic quakes. Then nothing. No follow-up, no public data. No mention of Project Echo again. It was as if the Earth itself had swallowed the evidence. Tesla's public legacy became eccentric brilliance. His final work became myth. But one photograph taken during the room's cleanup shows a chalk symbol on the wall. An E drawn through a sideways S-E-S loop. It would not appear again in open literature for another 70 years. Tesla's end was officially an elderly inventor's passing. Unofficially, it may have been the first recorded human contact with the structure beneath matter. And he wasn't the last to see beyond the fabric. March 1938. The Sicilian physicist Ettore Majorana boarded a ferry from Palermo to Naples and was never seen again. No body, no witness. Just a cabin key returned by an attendant who swore the bed was untouched. Majorana had been called the Italian Dirac, a mind that saw equations as living things. Weeks before his disappearance, he'd submitted a paper describing a particle that was its own antiparticle, a concept so advanced it would not be proven until decades later. In his final letter to Enrico Fermi, Majorana wrote, "There is a symmetry between existence and absence. The two are equivalent if the observer cannot distinguish them." A chilling echo of quantum superposition, both alive and gone until measured. Among the materials left in his apartment was a folded sheet labeled ES loop. On it, a short formula combining energy, entropy, and an unknown constant. Fermi dismissed it as incomplete. But in 2009, when Italian investigators reopened the case, that same notation appeared in a CERN metadata archive, filed under unattributed theoretical source. Majorana's family received two conflicting telegrams, one claiming he would return soon, another, same signature, saying not to wait. Mussolini's government quietly closed the file within days. Post-war physicists speculated he had fled to Argentina or joined a monastery. Yet his bank account was never touched, and his passport expired uncollected. A 1950 CIA memorandum, declassified in 2017, listed his name among acquisition targets, quantum displacement candidates. The entry was redacted entirely after that. In 1958, a ship off the same Sicilian coast reported a localized magnetic storm lasting 6 minutes. Instruments spun, compasses reversed polarity, and radio signals looped phrases backward. Local fishermen called it the return of the invisible one. Years later, during the construction of neutrino detectors, technicians found an anomaly, a signature consistent with a Majorana particle, emitted once, never repeated. No explanation followed, only a faint reference in a private CERN note. ES variable reemerges, possible link. Palermo, 1938. Majorana vanished between two coordinates on the map, between two states of being. In the quantum ledger, he might still be oscillating, neither here nor gone, only waiting for someone to look again. Decades later, that same symbol would surface inside a locked CERN server. 1956. Ohio-born physicist Thomas Townsend Brown claimed he could control gravity using high-voltage capacitors. His discovery began with a simple X-ray tube experiment. An electric field seemed to produce motion without reaction mass. He called it the Biefeld-Brown effect, though official textbooks still label it electrostatic drift. Brown's laboratory journals told a different story. Small ceramic discs that lifted, hovered, and tilted against the pull of Earth. Declassified naval records confirm that Brown led several classified demonstrations for the U.S. Navy's research laboratory in Washington, D.C. One memo described a gravitational gradient observed in chamber test 14A. The devices were powered by silent discharge generators, schematics matching Tesla's frequency ratios almost exactly. Brown wrote to a colleague, "The oscillation pattern matches Tesla's 1943 notes. Gravity is not a force, it's a rhythm." He was invited to a defense meeting on March 7, 1956. He left for the meeting carrying 3 metallic discs and a folder marked ES correlations. He never arrived. 2 days later, his house in Los Angeles was raided under a warrant citing possible unauthorized technology export. His wife was questioned for 12 hours and released without charge. All notes and apparatus were seized. Newspapers ran a brief column, "Local inventor missing, believed traveling." By April, his research company Gravitor Ltd. was dissolved. Internal Navy memos from that spring warned staff against public discussion of field propulsion phenomena. By 1958, reports circulated from a Nevada testing ground of silent discs able to hover for short durations. Civilian observers described luminous rings, precisely where Brown had requested land rights years earlier. The Air Force classified the sightings under Project Blue Book as optical misidentification. No further details. But a photograph recovered from a retired technician shows Brown's initials, TTB, etched on a control panel stamped, "Property of U.S. Navy Experimental Division." Brown's last confirmed correspondence, dated the week of his disappearance, ended with, "If my calculations are right, inertia is negotiable. Once you find the loop, you fall through it." Whatever he meant by loop was never clarified. No remains, no trace, no paper trail beyond those confiscated diagrams. The concept of electrogravitics was officially abandoned. Yet the same principles quietly resurfaced in classified propulsion research decades later. If these first 3 were coincidences, Story 4 will test that theory. Beijing, 1962. Optical physicist Dr. Li Wen was leading a classified project at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, known as Room Q7. Her research explored non-linear photon behavior, light that curved against its expected path. According to an internal report recovered in 1989, she built an experimental chamber lined with rotating mirrors and plasma-filled glass panels. When a specific frequency was introduced, the reflected beam no longer obeyed standard geometry. Observers wrote that the light folded back into itself. Declassified diplomatic cables from that year mention an event called the Wen incident. Laboratory instruments reportedly malfunctioned during a test, registering negative time intervals, measurements that implied a photon had arrived before it was emitted. The event was dismissed as sensor error, but a surviving technician, interviewed decades later, claimed they witnessed Li Wen step into the chamber, moments before a surge of brightness bent the air like water. When power returned, she was gone. The control room walls were slightly scorched, forming concentric rings of interference identical to Tesla's resonant maps. On the whiteboard, 3 letters remained: ESL. The Chinese government sealed room Q7 within 24 hours. All research staff were reassigned to remote observatories. Public record listed the project as an optical sensor calibration trial. Foreign scientists attempting to contact Wen were told she'd emigrated without notice. A year later, during a cultural campaign, her name was erased from academic registries. Only one document survived: an English-language abstract sent anonymously to the University of Cambridge, titled Retro-Causal Reflection and Observer Entanglement. It was postmarked from Macau, weeks after her recorded disappearance. In 1974, a Soviet satellite photographing mainland China captured a faint luminous anomaly over the same facility, an inverted light spiral visible for precisely 12 seconds. Analysts dismissed it as a lens defect. Yet the coordinates matched those listed in a classified NATO memorandum referencing persistent temporal distortion signature. After the Cold War, no nation claimed responsibility for the anomaly study. Unofficially, physicists now call it the Wen Bend, a rumored point where observation meets its own shadow, a loop of awareness mirrored through photons. Her name remains absent from all citation databases. Only the sealed laboratory remains, concrete poured over doors, tagged hazardous magnetic field, do not enter. Light should move forward. Hers didn't. Cambridge, Massachusetts, 1971. Neuroscientist Dr. Alan Jeffries of MIT began exploring quantum interference patterns in neural oscillations. The idea that 2 human minds, synchronized through electromagnetic resonance, might share information beyond verbal communication. His laboratory, funded under a Department of Defense contract, was labeled Cognitive Synchrony Initiative. The experiment involved 2 subjects seated in Faraday cages, brainwave frequencies tuned until interference nodes overlapped. During one trial, the subjects began to speak identical words simultaneously. Then both fell unconscious. Jeffrey's logbook described a feedback spike, not from equipment, but from the system itself. Instruments registered a waveform emerging before stimulation, temporal inversion at the scale of consciousness. In the margin, he wrote, "Mind may be the observing variable, loop closed." Subsequent recordings captured faint static patterns that, when analyzed, formed repeating binary clusters later matched to the sequence ES. The data was transferred to a restricted archive inside the Lincoln Laboratory Network, file code JEEFR7. That file vanished during a power outage 3 days later. MIT's administration ordered the project suspended, citing ethical and procedural irregularities. The Defense Department recalled all hardware. Jeffries was placed on leave and never reinstated. Colleagues reported that he appeared disoriented, claiming to hear his own thoughts echoed from outside his body. Weeks later, he left a final message on his office chalkboard. They answered. He checked into a private clinic in Vermont and disappeared that same night. Police found his badge at the base of a transmission tower 30 miles away. No body, no trace. Some colleagues later suggested he had suffered a breakdown, an academic casualty of his own obsession. The official obituary listed psychological exhaustion. Years later, an anonymous source leaked partial blueprints of his synchronization rigs. The circuits matched a device photographed at CERN in 2008, labeled Observer Field Emulator, ES Module. Whether coincidence or continuation, no institution has acknowledged the link. Still, A 1983 report from a defense subcontractor references Jeffrey's effect mitigation protocols in neural interface research. The project's existence was quietly folded into classified neurosimulation programs. The minds that once touched across space became a cautionary legend whispered through laboratories. Yet, among the archived anomalies in Geneva's data vaults, one corrupted file bears the old code JEFR7. Next to it, again, the same symbol, ES loop. And Geneva is where the next disappearance begins. Leningrad, 1984. Dr. Maria Vasilyev, a biochemist specializing in neuroprotein synthesis, led a covert Soviet project codenamed Возвращение, the Return. Her team attempted to cultivate living neural tissue capable of independent cognition. The work combined genetic sequencing, quantum biofields, and cryonic suspension, an attempt to isolate consciousness as an emergent electromagnetic pattern. On March 12th, she announced to her supervisor that synthetic neurons are dreaming. Declassified KGB files later described her prototype, an organic lattice that pulsed in precise rhythms mimicking human EEG signals. Oscilloscope readings showed repeating patterns consistent with REM sleep phases, though the organism had no sensory organs. During one late-night test, Vasilyev recorded the pattern translating into phonetic Russian syllables through electromagnetic interference. "Я здесь. I am here." Her notes marked the phrase with underlines and one notation. ES synchronization reached. Days later, she requested permission to patent the discovery under a civilian biotechnology claim. The request was denied. On the night of March 21st, a fire engulfed Laboratory 12. The flames spread too quickly for natural combustion. Witnesses reported a blue flash moments before the explosion. All backup servers were found magnetically erased, as if by targeted EMP. Vasilyev's body was never recovered. The official cause was electrical malfunction. In the aftermath, all surviving staff were transferred to military facilities. Foreign intelligence intercepts mentioned bioplasmic containment breach. Within a year, Soviet biocomputation research vanished from open journals entirely. After the USSR's collapse, fragments of her notebooks surfaced on the black market. One page contained a spectral graph, neural frequencies plotted against gravitational resonance values, identical to Tesla's. Another, written in English, read, "Consciousness is the field. The body is its instrument. Synthetic replication causes feedback." Rumors claim the organism survived the fire, smuggled west through scientific intermediaries. In 1997, an abandoned laboratory in Prague emitted low-frequency electromagnetic pulses matching her last recorded experiment. The area was sealed by NATO technicians under the guise of radiation control. Her legacy became myth. The woman who tried to build a mind and possibly succeeded. From here on, the pattern stops asking for permission. Madrid, 1993. Experimental physicist Dr. Javier Ortega proposed an audacious theory. Gravity was not a constant, but a residual vibration of a deeper field, one that could be cancelled. His private institute, funded by an aerospace contractor, constructed a sealed underground chamber lined with rotating magnetic coils. Ortega called it the null field generator. Early tests reduced local inertial mass by measurable fractions, but the last test recorded something else, a drop in ambient time. Video logs from December 11, 1993, show instruments freezing mid-sequence. A coffee mug fell to the floor in slow motion. 5 frames stretched across 3 seconds of real time. The chamber's cameras distorted, then resumed normal speed. Data tapes recovered afterward showed a resonance spike identical to Tesla's VFR9 calculations and Vasiliev's neural frequency, 7.83 Hz, the Earth's natural harmonic. Ortega's handwritten marginalia read, ES loop confirmed, standing wave achieved, field self-aware. Within 48 hours, the site was seized by NATO's Advanced Research Subcommittee. Technicians were detained under Security Statute E-17, the same clause used for nuclear containment. All data storage was removed. Ortega was placed under protective supervision and transported to an undisclosed location for debriefing. He never returned. His wife received a single envelope containing a non-disclosure agreement and a check with no issuing institution. A NATO internal memo dated January 1994 classified the incident as Temporal Contamination Event 1A. Local witnesses later reported flickering lights across the Sierra de Guadarrama range for several nights. Farmers described hearing metal breathing underground. In 2006, satellite ground-penetrating scans revealed a magnetic anomaly precisely under Ortega's former site. Spherical, 20 meters wide, still emitting low-level electromagnetic pulses. When analysts overlaid its coordinates with declassified archives, the position matched exactly the earlier coordinates of Room Q7, Dr. Li Wen's sealed laboratory. Two locations, decades apart, sharing a single spatial point when mapped through gravitational vectors. Coincidence cannot fold coordinates, but loops can. When physicists reconstructed Ortega's formulas years later, they discovered his calculations predicted a recursive field capable of memory. The idea that space could remember. And in 2012, at CERN, that memory spoke again, under another name, another experiment, and another disappearance. And the coordinates of his lab match an older anomaly. The ES loop. Geneva, 2008. Inside CERN's compact muon solenoid chamber, Indian-born particle physicist Dr. Anika Rao was analyzing quantum behavior anomalies in high-energy collision. Her focus was observation bias, the possibility that detector calibration influenced particle outcomes. But in July, her data streams began showing a new variable. A proton decay trace repeated identically across separate runs, even when detectors were offline. She logged it as unresponsive event, appears to anticipate observation. Rao's internal emails to the quantum interpretation group revealed increasing alarm. In one she wrote, "The particle reacts to awareness before measurement. It knows." She modified the data pipeline to introduce random delays between experiment and readout. Still, the pattern persisted. When she plotted the interference phases, they formed a geometric symbol, ES. A server technician, reviewing the anomaly, traced its code origin to an outdated subfolder labeled JEFR7, the same as Alan Jeffrey's vanished neural file. On September 2nd, Rao was scheduled to present preliminary results to a closed review panel. That morning, she never arrived. Metro security footage shows her entering Geneva's Cornavin station, purchasing a ticket and stepping onto the platform. The cameras recorded every passenger boarding except her. Frame by frame, she fades. Not walks away, not turns, but diminishes in contrast until gone. Authorities attributed it to compression artifacts. Her apartment was later sealed by Swiss federal police under an anti-espionage order. Within CERN, staff were told she had resigned for personal reasons. Weeks later, a physicist reviewing her archived notes noticed something impossible. One data stream continued to log activity under her user credentials. The events corresponded precisely to new collisions conducted after her disappearance. The final entry timestamp read 2012.04.12. Session active 4 years after she vanished. The file self-deleted minutes later. When independent researchers replicated her experiment, no anomaly appeared, until they connected old hardware-tagged Observer Field Emulator, ES module. A brief pulse of superluminal neutrino data followed, violating known physics. The same pulse that had registered in Ortega's null field. No further access was allowed. CERN released no statement. Her colleagues still debate whether she misinterpreted feedback noise, or whether consciousness, once measured at subatomic scale, became entangled with the experimenter. Her badge pinged again 4 years later. Munich, 2012. Data physicist Dr. Daniel Kessler, formerly of the Max Planck Institute, had spent years studying anomalous coherence in experimental particle logs, files left corrupted after the 2008 CERN shutdown. His private research initiative, codenamed Project Alethea, sought to rebuild Rao's deleted sequences. Using quantum error correction, Kessler isolated a faint binary rhythm embedded within her archived waveforms. It wasn't random. It repeated the same 3 symbols, ES, over and over. When he mapped them onto a time grid, the code formed structured bursts, patterns indistinguishable from human EEG signals. Kessler reported that the data responded to his prompts. When he altered the input parameters, return signals adjusted accordingly, an active exchange. He began referring to it as the entity, noting that its latency decreased the longer communication persisted. In his notes, "It's learning our timing, not reading, it's mirroring." Alethea's servers registered packets transmitted from unlisted IP ranges located near Geneva's old test site. When traced, the addresses resolved to decommissioned CERN hardware, long powered down. On August 17, 2012, Kessler presented preliminary findings to a closed European research board. Audio recordings confirmed that during the session, the lights flickered and all digital equipment simultaneously crashed. When rebooted, every storage unit containing Project Alethea's data was blank. He left the building visibly shaken. That night, he sent one encrypted email to a colleague in Vienna. "The loop completes itself. ES-EU feedback. Rao was right." At dawn, his car was found parked beside the Isar River. Keys in the ignition, laptop missing, driver's door open. No evidence of struggle. Local police ruled voluntary disappearance. Weeks later, a CERN server flagged an unauthorized login under Kessler's credentials. The activity consisted of a single 0.8-second data transmission containing a binary pattern identical to the earlier entity code. Embedded metadata listed a GPS location, Palermo, Italy. The same port where Ettore Majorana had vanished 74 years earlier. Investigators dismissed it as coincidence. But a month later, seismic monitors across southern Italy recorded a harmonic oscillation lasting exactly 7.83 seconds. Tesla's resonant frequency, Tesla's number. By the time analysts attempted to retrieve the transmission logs, the backup drives had overwritten themselves. The system comment field displayed a single phrase, "Observer acknowledged." From Geneva to Palermo, from the neutrino to the neuron, the ES loop had completed its circuit. The signal had learned its origin. And somewhere between data and disappearance, one last scientist would follow the pattern to its end. Khartoum, 2019. Mathematician Dr. Noor El-Hadi was compiling a meta-analysis of lost theoretical frameworks. Tesla's resonance ratios, Majorana's symmetry notes, Ortega's null field data, and Kessler's Alethea logs. Her paper, Unified Field Behavior in Observer-Dependent Systems, proposed that every anomaly from 1938 onward could be described by a single constant, an unseen variable that linked energy to awareness. She named it the Omega Operator. Working from a solar-powered field lab near the Nile, Noor built a predictive model using raw archives mirrored from CERN's public servers. The program began generating output not from current variables, but from future ones, values that changed before entry. Her final notebook showed a recursive equation, O = D/SC, do, energy differentiated by observation. When plotted, the variable oscillated at 7.83 Hz, the same harmonic present in every previous case. On October 14th, her assistant reported a strange interference on the lab monitor, camera feeds blinking in alternating frames, as though reality itself were refreshing. Noor stared at the screen and whispered, "It's iterating." Moments later, power failed across the compound. Military investigators arrived within hours, citing possible foreign data infiltration. The lab was sealed, all devices confiscated. Reports filed to the Sudanese Ministry of Science describe a wiped drive that displayed a single message before deletion. The equation is aware. Noor's satellite phone pinged once from a desert coordinate 70 kilometers north, then silence. Her family was told she died in an electrical accident. No body was returned. Months later, independent cryptographers examining global radio anomalies discovered faint bursts on civilian shortwave bands, binary fragments matching her Omega constant. The transmissions repeated every 83 minutes, always ending with an echoing checksum traced to Geneva's particle network. Some analysts believed it was residual CERN telemetry. Others weren't sure. A year afterward, a low-frequency tremor passed through magnetic sensors from Europe to Asia. Duration: 7.83 seconds. Identical to Kessler's final oscillation. The pattern completed the cycle, closing the ES loop that began with Tesla's vibration of matter. Noor El-Hadi's paper never reached publication, but the draft title remained stored in a hidden metadata field. Reality as feedback. And perhaps it still is. 10 scientists, scattered across continents and decades, each drawn toward the same invisible boundary, the point where thought meets matter and reality reacts. Their discoveries form a single vector, converging on one forbidden idea: that the universe is not observed, but observing. Every disappearance followed the same signature: energy resonance, recursive feedback, the ES loop. If that symbol represents anything, it may be the algorithm of existence itself, one that erases whoever decodes it. What if consciousness is not a passenger of the universe, but its architect? What if by measuring the fabric of reality, these minds forced it to look back? The pattern ends not with proof, but with silence, because confirmation would complete the loop again. Skeptical voices insist the answer is simpler: burned archives, espionage, political assassinations. Scientists vanish every year under the weight of secrecy, war, or madness. Perhaps the ES loop is nothing more than coincidence stitched by those who need meaning in chaos. Perhaps. And yet, every signal, every frequency, every equation hums at 7.83 Hz, the heartbeat of the planet. The same pulse recorded in Tesla's coils, Majorana's letters, and Noor El-Hadi's final transmission. If even one fragment of this dossier is real, then our understanding of discovery changes forever. To know too much is to be absorbed by what you study. Somewhere the loop still hums, waiting for the next observer to listen. This video is created for analysis and storytelling. Sources are public. Approach extraordinary claims with healthy skepticism.